Hey AP Bio folks, this is the lecture about carbohydrates. And so as we know from last class, carbohydrates can include anything starchy like French fries or, pasta or breads. And they also include more simpler sugars like candy and fruit, things like that. So carbohydrates are mainly used for energy. Okay, so if we're talking about the uses of carbs in our bodies, the number one place carbohydrates go is to give us energy through cellular respiration. Okay, and remember, cellular respiration happens in our mitochondria, and that's how we convert our food chemical energy into energy of ATP, which we can use a little more easily in our cells. Okay, carbs are also used with proteins, and what they do is mark the cell. Okay, so they could help mark cells. So each of your cells are uniquely marked on the surface, so you can recognize your own cells, your cells can recognize each other, and that kind of helps your immune system to recognize anything foreign. All right, so there's carbohydrates on the surface of all your cells. And those are the two main uses, although we do see carbs, here and there. Now, the structure of a carbohydrate, or the monomer for a carbohydrate, is a monosaccharide, which is simply just a sugar. Okay, a simple sugar. Okay, and you can recognize monosaccharides by their ring structure here that usually has all carbons except for one oxygen stuck right there. And they also have some hydroxyl groups all over the edges. Okay, so just depends which one you're looking at. So these are three common ones, you guys can only see, this one right here is fructose. I think it's cut off for you guys. Okay, so some of them are 5 carbon sugars, some are 6. But either way, they sort of have the same look about them. All right, so monosaccharides link together to make disaccharides, which can then link and go on to make polysaccharides. And if they get really big, hundreds and thousands of monosaccharides, then we get something like a starch. All right, and the name of this linkage that sugars make together is called a glycosidic linkage. So it's characterized by this oxygen stuck in the middle. And the way that happens is a dehydration reaction that we talked about in class. So a hydrogen comes off of one of those sugars, the hydroxyl from another, and that's going to come off as water, and they link up together. Remember, this is all helped along by enzymes. This doesn't just happen on its own. But either way, we get a disaccharide here. So that is how they link. Okay. And that again shows that glycosidic linkage. So a hydrolysis would basically break apart a disaccharide. So if we were to add water in, we would add an H there, OH here, and it would go back to being 2 different monosaccharides. So make sure you guys know the difference between dehydration and hydrolysis. All right. Now, plants and animals store their sugars a little differently. So let's start over here with plants. So plants, we know, make sugar through photosynthesis. And they take those sugars and start to build and build and build, and they can store all those simple sugars as starch. So starch is super branched. So it's like lots of those sugar rings bonded together, branching out. Really, really big type of molecule here. And we're talking, again, thousands of monosaccharides bonded together. And so starches are mainly found in the roots of plants, and this is kind of how they just store energy for the future in case, maybe it's not so sunny in the next few days. They can pull from their starch reserves and get their energy that way. Okay, now also, when you look at a plant cell, okay, so let's take a leaf. If we were to just look at one cell of that leaf, it's covered by a cell wall. That cell wall right there is made out of fiber. Okay, so when they say you need a high fiber diet, really what they're saying is just eat a lot of plants, because every cell of a plant is covered by a cell wall made of fiber. And the fancy word for fiber is cellulose. All right, and cellulose is a type of carbohydrate. It's a complex carbohydrate. And you can see right here, this is the cellulose fiber, so this is what we see surrounding the cell. But if you were to break it down, it's made of all these individual fibers, kind of like a rope braided together. And if we were to look real closely, you see those are just a whole bunch of sugar molecules there. Okay, so fiber, for human beings, when we eat fiber, we can't actually absorb these sugars. We don't have the enzymes to break those down. And so fiber actually has 0 calories for us. So that's why it's great if you're on a diet to eat really high fiber foods, lots of vegetables, fruits, things like that, because it doesn't give you calories. Whereas starch, we can break that down, okay? Starch happens to give us 4 calories per every gram of it. All right. Now, in our cells, when we eat sugar, we store that as glycogen. And glycogen is kind of like a temporary storage molecule. So we take all the simple sugars, all the monosaccharides from our food, and we convert them into glycogen. Glycogen lives in our liver cells and our muscle cells. And actually, when you guys work out, your muscles are pulling from those glycogen stores. And you may have noticed after a while, when you exercise really hard, your muscles just don't work anymore. And that's usually caused by lack of glycogen in your muscle cells. And it's going to take your body, you're going to have to rest a little bit, so your body can grab a little more glycogen out of your liver or break down some more food so you can have more energy. Okay, now glycogen in your muscles and in your liver, it's short-lived. You're using it all the time. But if it builds up too much, all this glycogen, it could get converted to fat. Okay, so your body has enzymes that can convert sugars to fats, glycogen specifically. All right, so those are the main things you have to know about carbohydrates. Hope that was helpful.